Hey everyone, this is Matt with Learn Everything About Design, and in today's video, we're going to be doing some speaker pods in Fusion. Now, this file was sent to me by a user. The speakers and the trim rings are already in the right location, and we've got a clean surface that was created from a scan of their A-pillar. And the idea here is to create something that looks a bit like this image, where they're more of this sort of bullet rounded shape blending into the A-pillar. Now, the problem that we have here is when we're talking about doing surfacing work is one, figuring out how we want to create the geometry. That's always something that we need to consider when we get started. And two is figuring out how we're going to turn this into a solid model that can be manufactured, whether it's 3D printing or some other way. Now, the end goal for this user is to 3D print this. The idea behind it is that it'll get wrapped, with some sort of cloth for the interior. But we understand, based on the way that the speakers are positioned, that the original A-pillar is somewhat sacrificial. It's going to have to be cut because the speakers are nested into them. But a couple of things that we need to do is we need to think that, okay, the tweeter itself is well into the housing here, which means that the approach that we take for that model is likely going to be different than the larger speaker here, because this one is kind of completely outside with the exception of this back corner. So what I want to do is I want to start with what I think is the easier one, and that's the mid-range speaker. So we'll hide the tweeter and the tweeter trim ring. And of course, if you want to follow along, the file's in the description. You can download it and play around with it. The user that sent this to me said that I was free to share it. It has been stripped back a bit, so there's only an A-pillar surface and the parts that we're interested in. So at this stage, what we need to do is decide the approach that we're going to take. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk a little bit about lofting to a point. So we're going to go to our surface tools to get started. I'm going to create a new offset plane off the back of the speaker to figure out where I want this pod to be. Let's say maybe 50 millimeters back. And then we'll create a sketch on that new plane, and we're going to create a sketch point. I'm not going to define this with dimensions. I'm simply want to play around with it a bit. I'm going to put it right there. And then I'm going to go to my create loft, and I want to loft to a point. So I'm going to pick the back edge of this trim ring and go to that point. So the main reason here that we want to do loft to a point is because we have point tangency, and we've also got tangency from the edge we selected. So this gives us the shape pretty much right off the bat. We don't have to do too much. We can play a bit with the tangency weight. So if you want it to be a bit more rounded, we can push the tangency weight back to 1.5. We also do have weight at the point tangency, so we can increase or decrease this. And basically what this is doing with a point tangency is that it's controlling the surface going into it from every direction. And I think this looks all right. And we've got a nice amount of overlap with the rest of the A-pillar. So I'm going to go ahead and say okay with that. I want to hide the rest of the solid bodies, and now I need to think about how we're going to build this. You can see right now the edge of the surface does not extend far enough to actually cut through. We can see that the inside A-pillar bleeds over this edge. So we'll either need to go through and extend this forward, which is one potential option, or we need to patch the front of this. And when we patch it, what we want to do is we want to stitch these together because they need to be one surface, but now it's completely enclosed. It's what we consider watertight, which means it automatically turns into a solid body. The problem here is we need to trim surfaces, not solids. But what we're going to do is we're going to use split body, select the A-pillar surface, as the, hold on, let's go ahead and step that back. What we want to do is split body. I picked offset face. We want to split the new speaker housing, and we want to use the A-pillar to do it. So this little piece that gets left inside, we're going to right-click and remove. We don't need it. We'll hide the A-pillar. And because we're in our surface tools, if we select this face and just hit delete, it'll convert it back to a surface. Now what we can do is use the new speaker housing as a trim surface to remove that extra little piece in the A-pillar and then stitch them both together. Now, we don't really need the front portion here, but I'm going to leave it on for now. It might come in handy later when we thicken this thing. And now that these are all one piece, we can go to our fillet, we can grab this, and we can just start to make a relatively large fillet. The restriction with the fillet here is we want to be careful with this bottom edge. While it will allow us, sorry, I'm going to move this around so we can see it a bit. while it will allow us to create a larger and larger fillet, what we're going to run into is this edge is starting to deteriorate. And what I mean by that is we're losing the clean edge, which is likely going to make thickening this into a solid harder. And I'm going to go ahead and say okay with that extremely large fillet. And I'm going to go to create and thicken. We want to select the body from the folder, and we want to thicken it 2 millimeters and see what happens. You can see that it's failing. Let's say -2, we want to go outward, and you can see that it's failing. Now, my guess is that it's because of this fillet. I'm going to go back to this fillet and make it smaller until it doesn't affect that edge. So it looks like maybe 8 millimeters, and then try to do the thicken again. So now let's say 2 millimeters. We want to go inside, that's fine. If we go 2 millimeters outside at -2, we can see that's fine as well. So again, a big reason that we weren't able to do that is simply based on that fillet. Now, a way that you can get around this is by thickening this before the fillet. So if we select this and we want to go 2 millimeters outward, -2, and then come back with the fillet, now we don't really care so much about affecting that edge, but you can see it's starting to get thicker and it's leaving a little bit of a lip up front here. So these are the reasons why we need to be careful with this. But the main thing that we have learned is that we can thicken this, but we have to be careful with those features. So I'm going to step back and get rid of the thicken, and I'm actually going to leave this square corner on for now. We'll come back and we'll add the fillet later. But we now know that we've got sort of a limit of about 8 millimeters. Now, before we go too much further, let's bring back that mid-range trim ring and just make sure that we can incorporate it, because the trim ring itself comes all the way to the outside. And really what we need is this sort of inside surface here. So we're going to take our offset surface tool. We're going to grab basically everything on the inside here, and we'll say okay. And that's going to be sort of like a trim surface. So we'll use it as a trim tool, and then we'll try to get rid of everything on the inside. This could be tricky, and it extends all the way through. So the trim tool is that, and we want to get rid of, let's see, it doesn't like that inside piece. Let's just get rid of this for now. All right, so what do we have left? We've got basically this section right here. We need to use that as a trim. So instead of selecting the entire body, maybe I can just select that. No. Yeah, that last one didn't work. All right, we're gonna have to put a little bit more work into that, but that's okay. Basically, we've opened it up, so when we thicken it, we can add that mid-range trim ring back, and it should be okay, because the inside surface right there, when that thickens outward, we may just need to clean up that face a little bit. But I'm okay with that for right now. Double check that it can still thicken before we go too much further, because that would be a bummer to get farther and then not be able to actually create it. So now let's go and let's take a look at the tweeter. The tweeter is going to be more difficult because it's embedded in the A-pillar, meaning we need to account for actually clearing out some area. So what I'm going to do to make this work is I'm going to offset this outside section. I'm going to go out just 1 millimeter. Now, we're going to be thickening 2 millimeters, but I want to give myself a little bit of a gap. And I'm going to be using this to create the pod. And then from here, once again, we're going to create an offset plane on the back, figure out where we want it to blend, and then add our point. So create sketch point, again, kind of inside a little bit. We don't want it to be centered. And then we'll do our loft. So we're going to go from our offset surface, loft to a point, tangent, tangent, maybe increase that so that they are similar. Take it back to 2. Yeah, maybe 1.5. Yeah, I think that looks okay. All right, so now we've got our trim ring and this piece. I am going to stitch those together. and get rid of the tweeter in the mid-range. All right, so this one's a bit trickier because not only do we need to build out this pod, we also need to cut away some stuff from the inside. So I'm going to go basically about the same process. Going to cap the end off, stitch them together, which turns it into a solid body. And then we want to use split body, bodies to split, splitting tool, bodies to split, splitting tool. And then this guy right here, don't need it, so right click and remove. Hide our A-pillar surface, select and delete. And then now we can use it as a trim. So theoretically, we have now created basically very similar shape to what we did down here. The second part of this is that we actually need to extend this out. We need to cut a cone out because we can't block the speaker. Now this, we've got the tweeter trim ring and we've got the tweeter itself. So we can kind of get an idea. This right here, this is the piece that cannot be obscured. And the trim ring has actually got a little bit different geometry. So we've got the speaker and then we've got this sort of internal edge here, which is big enough so that the rest of the speaker can be inserted. So I am going to take this surface right here, and I'm going to go to create ruled surface off that edge. And we can do normal, so we can kind of bring that out. We can look at the A-pillar. And if we want to, we can go out 5 degrees, 10 degrees. Let's make that minus. And sort of, make it so that it's expanding as it goes away from the speaker. That looks okay. And a big thing that we need to consider at this stage is we need to remember that we're thickening this into a solid. So if we thicken this outward 2 millimeters, is that going to obscure the speaker? And if so, do we need to then grab one of these external edges or maybe offset it or something like that? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, okay, I'm going to go to offset, and I'm going to add just 1 millimeter here. I'm going to get rid of the inside one. I don't really need to see it. And now what I really need to remember is that when we offset something, it's going to be offset the normal direction. So what this means is I really need to be on this plane here. So if I hide the tweeter and I hide the trim ring, I need to be on this plane. And right now it looks like it may be overlapping a little bit. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use that plane as a trim tool just to make sure that I don't have any overlap. And it looks like, well, let's just see, trim that part away. And then we'll repeat that. And now we'll use the A-pillar to trim away this outside piece. Nope, looks like I got rid of too much. Let's undo that twice. All right, so A-pillar, trim away this piece, and see what we're left with. Repeat that, and trim away this. And we're left with that section there. So if we bring the tweeter back, it still fits inside. The trim ring still overlaps enough. You can kind of see where it goes to. So we can build that trim ring in to the geometry here. So everything's looking okay. Let's stitch these together. And let's try to thicken this. All right, so thickens 2 millimeters outward, okay. Let's try inward just to see in case we need it. Thickens inward okay as well. We really need to thicken outward because we're dealing with the surface of the A-pillar and we can't go inward. So we need to go outward, but we always have to pay close attention to things like the tweeter. You can kind of see here, we still have a gap, which is good. So everything works there. It may be sunken into the housing a bit much, so that's something that I may need to correct. But for the most part, we could take the tweeter and the trim ring, and I'm going to move it. I'm going to make sure that my coordinate system is going normal because I don't want to change the angle of the speaker, and just to make sure that everything fits and that we don't have any overlap. All right, still looks like it fits okay. So I think I'm happy with that. All right, so now we have a thickened solid body. The last step is to go ahead and round the corners and then maybe add some of those trim rings in if we need to. So I'm going to start a fillet. I'm going to try 5 mm there. That looks okay. Hold down Control and try this one. See, that looks like it's okay. It doesn't hit that edge. So we can try to increase it. 8 is about as far as that's probably going to go before it starts to mess things up. I'm going to say plus, and I'm going to add a fillet to the inside. So when we think about the inside and the outside, we need to remember that we thickened it 2 mm. So if we do, say, 6 mm on the inside, let's go ahead and take a look at this with a section analysis. So if we do 6 mm on the inside, right here, you can see that leaves a thick section here. So what we need to do is we need to go, let's say, 10 on the inside, and that will be a consistent thickness. Now you can see it's giving us an error. It doesn't seem to like going all the way to 10. Let's see if 8 will work. And if 8 will work okay, what we can do is we can adjust the outside. So we can make, let's go ahead and increase, actually decrease that. Sorry, go the other way. 6 and say okay. Man, it really does not like that fillet. Okay. All right, let's try this again. We'll go 4 and we'll take that one down to 4. Make sure both. All right. It's giving me an error somewhere, and I'm not really sure where. It's a weird graphic glitch there. It's right here. Okay. It's because they're overlapping. That's the problem. So it's the fillet on the outside that's the problem. So this one here, yeah. So those two can't overlap. Let's say okay. All right, I'm going to just delete this and try again. It's something on the outside it's not liking. I'll rotate this around. Let's try 5 and no, and 5. All right, so those are okay. Now let's try the inside. So that should be 7. That should be okay. All right, so now we got them blended. And if you need to, you can add fillets to like these front edges if you want to round them off, for example. You need to be careful with how much, obviously, because if you've got a trim ring or something here, you might not want to go to 20 mm, 10 mm. We got to be real careful with these overlaps here. Generally, what would be a good idea if you have multiple shapes like this that need to blend together, then we maybe take a step back and do something like some more advanced surfacing work in those areas. But for right now, I think that just keeping in mind that these are presenting some problems is okay. I'm also going to add one there. All right, so now we've got the two shapes. It's a solid body. We could 3D print this. Let me go ahead and add something here. We could 3D print this and we can install the speakers. The last real thing that we would need to do is make sure that we incorporate the trim rings, or at least the geometry for the trim rings. Because these are now solid, that's something that we could just select the face, create a sketch, and add all the features that are needed. I'm not going to go through that process because I think generally what we could do is just extrude or create the same features that we have for these trim rings. And I don't think that's really as important as the surfacing work that we did. But if you like this kind of content, you want to see more where I work through a design and kind of run into these challenges, then please let me know. I do have a lot of different files that I've been sent, everything from roof spoilers to brake caliper ducts to things like this, A-pillar speakers. I'm trying to get to all of them. It is quite a lot of different things that kind of cover the same topics. But if you do like this kind of content where we do walk through a specific design like this, let me know, and I'll be sure to to keep doing these as opposed to just putting them out and kind of helping the users out. We are also considering opening up a sort of a subscription-based service, and I know that's kind of a dirty word in this day and age, but considering doing something like that where we give more people the opportunity to get custom help videos instead of having to do a custom help video for YouTube. We have a place where we can generate these, and we don't have to do such a start to finish polished video where we walk through a design. If that's something that you'd be interested in, please leave a comment and let us know if that's something that we should pursue and try out. But as always, thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.